Hi, my name is Chuck Underwood. I'm the founder of UCentric Solutions. We are a small virtual accounting, bookkeeping, and advisory services firm in Kansas. We service small and medium-sized Kansas businesses, and we've done that for the past 15 years. One of the questions we get quite a bit from prospects and from some of the clients is, how do I automate my bookkeeping? So this video is intended to help give you kind of the overall sense of what the automation process looks like, what options you have available in QuickBooks and even outside of it that are cost effective and help you accomplish what you are trying to accomplish, which is to lower the amount of time that you have in your bookkeeping, but keeping the quality of that bookkeeping as high as possible. All right, so we're going to do that. We're going to do an overview today on the steps to automating your bookkeeping in QuickBooks Online, which is the platform that we use with all of our clients and that we recommend for small businesses in Kansas. So let's start. So the very first step when you're thinking about automating QuickBooks Online is you need to have your QuickBooks account integrated with your business bank and credit card accounts. So QuickBooks provides a way for you to tie your business bank accounts and business credit card accounts into QuickBooks Online. All right, and so the reason that's important is that in a business, you're tied to two things really. There's two major components. You have money coming in and you have money coming out. And when you're trying to automate your accounting, you're trying to get as much of that data inside of QuickBooks as possible. And the thing that the primary way to do that is by connecting your business bank and credit card accounts into QuickBooks Online. So let's take a real quick look at where that's at. Open up account here, and what I have open right now is bank transactions, and you can get to that page right here. All right, so we can get to that by clicking on the left side. You can go to transactions and you'll find bank transactions at the top. You can then bookmark it, which I've done, which puts it up above. So the bank transaction page is the data that's flowing into your bank and your credit card accounts flowing into QuickBooks. It can and cannot be data that's already in your QuickBooks General Ledger. So it may or may not be. But what we're trying to do is capture all the data that could possibly impact your business and make sure that it's showing up in QuickBooks so that you know what you need to do with it. So bank transaction page is really going to be the primary page where you reconcile your bank account, where you reconcile your credit card account, and capture all that cash in or that money in and the money coming out of your business. So you're going to see on this screen, for example, in this section right here, you're going to see the transactions that are coming in from a credit card. And what you're going to notice is you're going to see some things are matched, categorized. So if it's green like this, and you see that the button is switched over to match, that it sees a transaction inside of QuickBooks General Ledger system. So there is a transaction already posted inside of QuickBooks that this bank transaction, as it flowed in, QuickBooks reviews that information against what's in QuickBooks General Ledger and says, hey, I found this transaction, and so do you want to match it? And that's ideally where we want to be when we're automating. We want as many of the transactions that flow in from our bank account, from our credit card account, to actually show up in here as matched. So that's part of that automation process that we're talking about. So this is the primary place where we're going to see the efforts of your automation, whether they are fruitful or not. Okay, so that's the very first step that we need to take, is we need to be able to connect your business bank accounts and your credit card accounts to QuickBooks Online so we can see all of the money that's coming in, and we know that we need to do something with it, or maybe we've already done something with it, but we need to make sure that we've captured everything. Same way with the money out. All right, so that's step one. Let's take a look at step two. All right, step two. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where most of the changes need to take place. And so for each thing that we talk about today, we're going to have some separate videos that speak specifically to all the things that I suggest that you start doing as opposed to stop doing. Okay, so we're going to have separate videos that you can dive a little bit deeper into. How do I do this? What are the steps? What's the screen look like? How do I know where I'm at when I'm trying to accomplish these different things? Okay, so step two is you need to change your processes from manual to digital, and that's the only way this leads to any automation. All right, so let's take a look at money coming in. You get payments from your customers. They come in by mail, so there's the delay of time for mail to arrive. You've got to pick up the mail, and you've got to create a manual deposit, and then you've got to take it to the bank, then you've got a receipt, then you need to code that manually into your accounting system. All right, same way with paper invoices. You're mailing them out. That takes some time to get to your customer. That takes them time to open it, takes them time to review it, code it, put it through its approval process, get submitted for a payment, and then for that check to be sent to you, mailed to you, and then received. So all that takes a lot of time. And if we can possibly do it, we want to reduce the amount of time that it takes for you to send your invoices to receiving your payment. All right, so we need to try and eliminate as much of the mail going out, reduce the amount of paper invoices going out, and let's flip over to the start side and look at, let's email all invoices through QuickBooks Online. There's no reason not to use it. That feature is available to you. It saves time, and on top of that, there is some automation in here in two places. One is you can automate reminders to your customers on invoices that haven't been paid within a certain amount of time. I think there are maybe 2 to 3 reminder options that you have available to you. You also can set up recurring invoices. So if you're in a market where you bill customers on a regular basis, something like a subscription basis, maybe a rental organization, you can create your invoices and structure them to be recurring and have them automatically released on a certain date. And on top of that, you can use QuickBooks Payments, which is an additional module that you can add to your invoicing that allows your customers to pay ACH or credit card. And in fact, you can actually have them set up to approve recurring payments in that fashion. So we're going to get into deeper videos on all those features, but you have that available to you in QuickBooks Online. You know, the transition is just to change your mindset that you have to go get emails for your customers. And here we are in 2025. I don't think that's unreasonable, and we're finding with all of our clients, even some that are a bit old school, we've been able to get them move over to email, and it has made an impact on the time from billing to the time that they get paid. So it's an important step to take, and it drastically reduces the amount of time that you spend on the receivable process, invoicing and depositing and things. So let's look at that. Manual deposits. That's something that we would like to stop, or at least reduce the amount of it that's going on. All right, so obviously there's some industries where this may not work. This may not be a place where you can do some automation. However, if you find that you do invoice through QuickBooks Online, you do have the ability to reduce the amount of transactional activity or checks that come in the mail that you need to manually deposit. Then there's manual entry for invoicing, manual entry into QuickBooks on your deposits into your QuickBooks account. And if you're using the recurring invoices and the ACH payments that come in through that system automatically are received into your QuickBooks system, which is fantastic on timing. Now, ACH and credit card payments aren't free. There's a cost associated with it. You can do some things on your invoicing to maybe recover some of those costs. If you know that you're going to be receiving payment by credit card, you could probably tack on a fee onto your invoices and such. But you have to understand that with automation, there is a cost associated with it that leads to or allows for reducing your time on manual entry. And then there are some cases where some of the businesses that we deal with are like an e-commerce arena. And in those cases, they may have to do some manual imports or manual entry of data into QuickBooks in order to show the invoices that are coming in or payments that are coming in from customers and things like that. There are other options available to you to automate. You can import transactions using a product called Fast Transactions. It's a fairly cheap product with incredibly powerful and easy to use, easy to understand platform that you can do large journal entries or large deposits or large invoicing, things like that. That's available. But for the e-commerce folks, you can find that there are apps already created by Intuit that allow you to synchronize in QuickBooks your Square account, Shopify, Etsy, Squarespace, PayPal, Wix, Stripe, Amazon Seller, and WooCommerce. All of these you can connect to QuickBooks directly, and you can find those on the App Store for QuickBooks. So they have the largest number of integrated applications for an accounting system, bar none. No one has as many. So it is fantastic from that regard. And also, if you have more complicated Stripe, Shopify, Amazon, PayPal accounts, there are third-party applications like Sender that are amazing at the amount of detail that you can bring into your system. So if you have a more complex e-commerce setup, Sender is a fantastic application to consider. All right, so if you can apply these things and you're looking at the money coming in, you'll be able to dramatically reduce the amount of time that you spend on bookkeeping for invoicing, payments, depositing, etc. And again, we're going to look at all of this information in more detail one by one in separate videos. Okay, so let's take a look at money out. Again, looking at money out, you have snail mail. We need to eliminate that as much as possible. Time spent cutting manual checks, we try to reduce that as much as possible also. There's time intensive, lots of inaccuracies when we're doing that. So manual input, we're manually doing things that we're not always at our best when we're busy as small business owners, or we have a lot of things on our plate. That's not one of the things that we probably should be spending our time on. And there are some options available to you to make this process faster and more accurate and efficient. All right, same issues with manual entry and manual imports. You really don't have to do that as much when you consider that there are ways to automate it. So how do we automate money coming out? All right, so the very first thing I would suggest is that all bills come in by email, because you have the ability to forward when you have email. And QuickBooks Online right now has the ability, with the release of AI, they have their receipts and expense and bill uploads that you can upload directly into QuickBooks, and they have a forwarding address that you can use. So you can set up rules in Outlook or Gmail in particular. Both of those have very rich forwarding capabilities, and you can have that stuff automatically upload to QuickBooks Online, and it will pre-populate quite a bit of that information and reduce the amount of time you have into keying in or categorizing a bill or an expense. So that's an option that I would suggest, that an easy and cheap option for you to get your bills presented to you in the form of email, if possible. All right, the second thing I would suggest for anybody trying to automate is to get a sheet-fed scanner. So we used what used to be Fujitsu Scan Snaps. It was purchased by Ricoh, I think, within the last year or two. And so the Scan Snap series is the series that I would look at, and the X1600 right now I think you can get for either between $400 and $450. It is dollar for dollar the most valuable piece of office equipment that you can purchase. You'll have that on hand for years to come. And the reason you want to do that is, again, we're taking manual paper, analog, creating a digital document that you can save, you can upload to QuickBooks Online, and have QuickBooks pre-populate some of that information for you so that you can finish up by categorizing those transactions. All right. Yeah, but the sheet-fed scanner has a lot more value than that. You can use it for employment agreements, new employee paperwork, contracts, rental agreements, you name it. Okay. So the next thing we'd want to do is set up a way to do automated payments, or at least set up ACH payments if possible. QuickBooks Online now has QuickBooks Bill Pay, which is probably it is the newest member of the bill pay world, and they are still fairly new, still pretty, I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but it's not very sophisticated at this point, and it's rough. It's kind of rough around the edges. So small businesses, it's a free to use. Let's say it's free to have it. It has a cost, just like all of any bill pay options that are out there for ACH payments, and also for manual bill payments that you create, or manual checks that you create through it. So you don't actually write the manual check, but you authorize QuickBooks to create manual checks for you, or you authorize them to do ACH. And so there's some fees associated with that. Now, if you're a simple business, you have just a handful of bills and things like that, you don't have sophisticated or complicated approval processes and categorization issues, that's a good option for you. It's the cheapest entry into that world, and you'll find that it's worth every penny to use this process, because you're not having to sit down, write a manual check, fill out an envelope, put a postage stamp on it, and get it to the mail. That stuff's just handled for you automatically once you check some boxes and move on. So the other thing you can do is to set up automated payments. So this has nothing to do with QuickBooks. This is just kind of a simple process that you can put in place that will radically automate your accounting processes as it relates to money coming out. So think of utilities, your electrical bill, your city bill, your water bill, your trash bill, your gas bill. All those things have options for automated payments. Do that. Put those on automated payment. They're going to be due at a certain time. You really don't have an option but to make sure that you pay those on time. So you go ahead and get those set up. Some other ones you could use: health insurance, any type of insurance actually. Supplemental insurance, just property insurance, liability insurance. Any vendor, in fact, that offers a recurring ACH payment option would be an excellent choice, because that's going to reduce the amount of time you spend on paying, right? So think of it. If you're getting a bill that comes from a vendor that's by email, it'll automatically forward up to QuickBooks, where it's going to pre-populate some information for you, and the payment is already in place for it to happen within its payment terms. So you're not having to enter but just a few things. You might have to categorize that transaction, and that's it. You don't have to worry about the payment at all, which takes half of the time away. So that's a great way to automate right there. All right. The other thing is similar, is you can pay your bills and expenses with a business credit or debit card. So for my business in particular, 95% of our money coming out is coming out by credit card. And so it radically simplifies the process for me, because that information is going to flow into our bank transaction page. And again, if I have the other information coming in by email, the original bill, the original receipt, I can then have those uploaded. And we're going to find, when we do some videos here in more detail, that when you upload a receipt to an expense that's already been coded, then everything, it's just a full circle automation. There's just one step that you have to take, and that's categorization, which when we look at step 3 might solve that final piece of the puzzle. All right, so again, you try to automate as much as you can. So putting things on business credit card or debit card or ACH payments is usually helpful when we think about automating our money coming out. All right, so the other thing you can do is you can also set up recurring bills and expenses. So on those ACHs that are coming out, you could go ahead and set up, like, that you're going to pay rent to your landlord and it's already set up on ACH. You can set up a recurring bill for that or a recurring expense for that, and it will post on whatever date that you choose, and it can go for as long as you want. Again, we're going to have a video for that to walk you through the steps on that process. Some other further things you can do to automate your money coming out is you can connect your Amazon business account app to QuickBooks. So just like these applications we looked at or talked about earlier for connecting your e-commerce, you have that option for your Amazon business account. So for every business that we've been associated with, Amazon is a catch-all account, right? So you can have all kinds of different expenses that need to be categorized differently, and QuickBooks recognizes that and has created a screen. We'll take a look at this real quick. And let's go back here. So when I was on bank transactions, you'll see something called app transactions. And this is going to show you some of the linkages that you can create that we talked about earlier: eBay, Shopify, PayPal, Squarespace, all those. And there's your Amazon business account. So you can get your purchases to come through, and it's in an app transaction page, similar to bank transactions, but separate. It allows you to categorize each line item of your Amazon purchase, and then you can approve it. And when you do, that's actually going to synchronize then with the bank transaction that's coming from your credit card, most likely for Amazon. And that transaction will be done. It'll be coded and completed. So it's pretty handy. So this kind of helps you with that idea of multi-categorization issues, because Amazon it's a catch-all, and so you're always going to have more than just office expenses on there, or more than office supplies on there. So that's a good automation tool right there. And it gives you links to the Amazon purchase, which is great, but it has all the detail of what you purchased right in front of you on the line-by-line item. Okay, and then the last thing I suggest is connecting Bill.com or Ramp to QuickBooks Online. So these are third-party applications. They are bill pay applications primarily. Bill.com's been around for quite a long time. They've probably been in the bill pay market longer than anybody else. They have a great payment network, meaning the payees and payers. There's a huge number of people on there that are connected, which makes the process of getting paid and paying simpler. But you also have the ability to upload. So when we talk about this would apply for businesses that are more complex, have a large volume of bills that have come through, with more complicated bills probably, and also have a more complex approval process. These are the two applications I would recommend for that purpose to use, is Bill.com and Ramp. So Bill.com's been in there longer. It has a deeper payment network, which is pretty powerful and available to you. But both these applications will do some pre-coding for you. There's a lot of what we call RPA built into even all the things we've talked about, is robotic process automation, or we're kind of setting a process in motion that doesn't change, doesn't require a lot of thought. We're trying to automate those things. And so Bill has that and Ramp has that feature into it, but you still have to check it, you still have to code, do some categorization, if you will. And then once you save those transactions, you can synchronize those with QuickBooks, and all that data flows into QuickBooks automatically for you, along with a copy of the bills involved. And then as far as payments, it's an approval process. All those things can be basically check marked off, and you can submit those to Bill or to Ramp for payment, and then they take care of that, whether it be ACH or manual checks. So again, you're taking all that off your plate, automating that by going through those steps. Okay, so let's go back to this idea of the money coming in and money coming out, and that whole idea of that bank transaction page, right? So those transactions are flowing in from the bank, from the credit card, and they're looking for matches in your QuickBooks General Ledger. All these things that we talked about over here in this step 2 are designed to categorize transactions, to get that information into QuickBooks already, so that you can match those transactions in your bank transaction page. So if I go back to bank transactions, our test account here, again, the idea is that we're trying to increase the volume of these transactions that are already in your general ledger system. That's what these green transactions are. And so you're minimizing your need to actually have to manually categorize anything. So this is a huge deal. So this is kind of this is where you check things off, right? This is where you can see the progress that you're making in terms of your automation. All right, so the more green items you have, that means you're making good progress, you're getting things automated. Now, for those things that flow through that maybe you just haven't gotten categorized automatically, there are some things that flow through that you just you don't have to spend a lot of time on, or you don't want to spend time on. And so what we can do is we can create bank rules, which is kind of the third step in automizing things. All right, so we can categorize using bank rules. So the categorization happens in the bank transaction page. There is a separate section for that we're going to look at right here called rules. So in bank transactions, we'll see a header called rules. And in this account, we don't have any rules set up. We're going to go dive deeper into this in a separate video, but this is a section where you can create some rules. I'm going to let you see what this looks like here. So you have a place to name them. You can say this is for money coming out, money coming in. That sounds familiar. You can make this apply to all bank accounts or maybe only particular accounts. You can decide what the criteria is going to be for this transaction to be categorized. You can test your rule on what's inside the bank transaction page, or the transactions that have come from your bank or your credit card. And then you can assign your transaction type, your category, your payee, etc. And we're going to look at that in greater detail here. But there's some important things you need to understand about the bank rule categorizations. So when you consider creating bank rules, the number one problem I have seen is you can let QuickBooks set those up or recommend those ahead of time. I would say do not do that, because what's going to happen is you'll agree to all the rules that it creates, and those rules are based on what it thinks makes sense, and it doesn't have the context of what your business is. No matter what the rules are in accounting and bookkeeping, there are specifications that are unique to each and every business, and it's important that those rules tie into your specifications, which is really helpful for people like me to be involved, that can help bridge that gap between what it is that you're doing, what are the accounts that you need to have in place for your business, and then make sure that any bank rules that are created apply to those specifications. So, but in lieu of that, you just need to test before you set the bank rules. Okay, so here's a rule for bank rules. All right, so you need to test before you set. So is a transaction repetitive? Is it always the same? And is it simple? Those three things have to be true before you set a rule. Okay, so let's talk about it. Repetitive is obvious. If you have a bill one time or you have a bank transaction that flows through from, say from Orlando, Florida, you purchase fuel, you're never going to be in Orlando again. You don't need to set a rule for that because it's not repetitive. It's never going to happen again, right? But let's say you have a freight company and you always buy fuel from the local depot. And so that's repetitive. You have multiple purchases every day, probably from that location, from that local depot, fuel depot, and that checks off the box for repetitive. It's going to happen all the time. Second step of that is always the same. What I mean by that is it always gets categorized to the same thing. So it's not going to be one day it's going to be fuel, another day it's going to be meals. It's not going to be, it's not going to change around. And so that's important. It needs to be the same category every time. So what I like to use is, for example, is our local electric company is called Evergy. We get a bill from Evergy every month. Evergy is always electricity. That's always the same, right? And it's simple. So that it's just one category. It's gonna be electricity. So we don't have multiple categories that we're trying to code it to. And it's important because when the bank fee comes in, it only sees the final amount. It has no idea how to break out that charge. Okay? And remember, we're talking about these are the things that flow through that we don't have automation set up for on the bill side. Or we don't get emails, we don't get any type of communication about the transaction ahead of time. All right, so we're just setting up a rule for some simple things. So Evergy would be a great example for that. And so one category is always the same, it's repetitive. So that's great for using bank rules. All right, and so there are some steps to the bank rules. We kind of looked at this a little bit just a few minutes ago in looking at the actual screen, but getting a great bit more detail on that. But then the last step is just a nice feature that QuickBooks has offered is you can actually check a toggle that allows you to auto confirm or auto match a transaction when it comes through. So I would recommend when you first start automating, don't check that off yet. You create a bank rule. You want to look at that. If you don't check that box, what it does is it creates the rule, and on the screen that we have for bank transactions, it'll be on one of these regular black text, not on the green, and it'll have something like a rule off to the side in a green box. And it'll tell you what it's categorized based on that rule, and then you can just go ahead and categorize or actually hit post at that point. But basically, you know that QuickBooks has reviewed it, it passed it through the bank rules. The bank rules said, based on what you told us, this is where this should go. All right. One last thing, if you don't do categorization through a bank rule, if I click on any transaction, I'll click on this one, and you'll see right now the new thing that's been added is it's suggesting what this expense should be, since it's never seen it before. It gives you some information about it. It's gonna be super handy to have this in hand. And what you can do is you can create a rule from that point. So again, we're gonna get into more detail on that. There are some nuances to rules that you need to be careful about. You don't wanna create a bank rule for something that you're already automating with those step 2 activities that we talked about. This is kind of the last step for any transactions that you have that repeat, that you don't get documentation for, you don't get any communication about, that are not being posted to QuickBooks already. Because if you do this, if you follow the steps and you create a bank rule, it will ignore what's in a general ledger already and basically duplicate that transaction. So that's one thing you don't want to do. So there's some things you have to be aware of when you're working on automation. All right, so let's zoom back out here so we can kind of see this here, and there we go. So again, all this information in this section, step 3, is going to flow into QuickBooks. It goes into that bank transaction page. All the activity from step 2 that we discussed, those are going to be basically creating the transactions in the general ledger and providing the data that your bank transactions, your credit card transaction pages, that they can see those transactions and tell you what's missing, which is really valuable information. And again, everything that shows up that's matchable, that is going to match, that's saving you a ton of time on reconciling. So those are the steps I would recommend for getting yourself automated, starting moving that direction. Again, we're going to create some additional videos on this, on all of these topics here, specifically everything that's in green here on the step 2. So all the things we suggest that you do. Same way with the bank transactions, we'll spend some time on a separate video with that, and then we'll have a separate video just for bank rules.